What's the point of getting an ADHD autism diagnosis? Does knowing actually change anything? For ADHD, you can stop feeling like you are dumb or lazy. You know it isn't something you are choosing to screw up. You can target your coping strategies more effectively. Lazy people often need motivations, while people with ADHD might need structure or reminders. You can stop wasting your time on useless strategies. You can get medications instead of self-treating with stimulants like coffee, sports drinks, nicotine. You can ask for reasonable accommodation under ADA at your job or school. I don't know enough about autism to offer comparisons. Getting diagnosed can validate feelings and struggles, leading to better self-understanding and targeted support. It empowers individuals to advocate for their needs, improving daily life and relationships, without excusing responsibilities. It changes the context. It helps you understand yourself better. It may prompt you to learn more about those conditions and how they affect your life. That may lead you to focusing on developing specific skills, techniques, and coping mechanisms to better deal with them, and thus improve your life. Adult diagnosis can lead to starting treatments if one exists. There are some that think ADHD gets lessened or goes away as a child gets older, and while that's possible, it could just be coping mechanisms are refined so that one appears normal at a glance, and it takes a lot of energy to maintain. Medication takes the strain of needing those coping mechanisms and frees up the mind to do other things for a time. I also had a friend that had a serious health issue that the doctors were having trouble diagnosing and thus treating, and during an unrelated visit to a different doctor, the second doctor recommended a test for autism in response to something that was said. This test came back positive, and while making small talk with the first doctor for the serious health issue it came up. Turns out that there was a perfect explanation for what was happening. But it's a condition you can only have if you are autistic, so they kept thinking that couldn't be it and kept looking for an answer. So apparently it's possible to have a health issue that is linked to those conditions, so at least knowing is part of making sure you can get accurate health diagnosis if something is up. It makes it feel less like a failing loser human, and more like okay, I'm working as designed and I'm not crazy broken. Changes your perspective a lot. I got my diagnosis at age 27. For me, meds weren't the important thing, but the changed frame of self-understanding was. I'm not just lazy and unmotivated, there's a reason for it. I'm not just undisciplined and bad at forming habits. My brain literally doesn't form habits the same way as normal people. I don't hate people, but uncontrolled noise is incredibly overwhelming to me. It also gives me tools to explain and articulate to others why I am the way that I am. Unfortunately, the behaviors associated with these diagnoses are often just considered weird or antisocial. Being able to explain the reasoning often makes people more accepting. If you're in school, you can get adjustments made to the way that you take exams and stuff. Also, you don't know if any medications or coping strategies would work for you till you find out what your problems are. Outside of that and outside of school, it's, from my perspective, mostly just verification that you're not crazy. When people say that, my assumption is always the medication used to treat it is changing their life. The diagnosis is just the first step to getting the medication. And it's less accepted to post on social media, amphetamines changed my life. Any diagnosis helps you have a better understanding of yourself. I've always been the kind of person who was socially awkward, had intense interests in certain subjects yet struggled through school. Being diagnosed as being on the spectrum didn't change my life. It gave explanation to my life. And that's a good thing. But I really hate it when I see people online actively seeking an autism or ADHD diagnosis as if it's some kind of holy grail that's going to change their life. My daughter, at least, when she got her ADHD diagnosis, could shift her focus from I'm a stupid, worthless loser who nobody can ever like to I have to see specific challenges to overcome, and I'm actually quite intelligent. It has totally transformed her. It depends, but for some people, it can change a lot. I want to expand on others' comments with a slightly different lens. The question of the usefulness of diagnosis is an old debate in fields like clinical psychology. The individual motivations can vary greatly, but including for people in the age groups you mentioned, a diagnosis can offer some sense of being freeing, as well as relief, reassurance, connection, and access. More specifically, for example, have a name for a loved experience, and a sense of clarity with it, feeling of community. It becomes easier to explain the problem to others and professionals. Access to treatment or coping strategies, insight over I'm losing my mind, less of an unknown to deal with, can also help with access to support services. It's also quite common in these age groups for people to have children who exhibit similar behaviors or have the same struggles they had as kids, or their children get diagnosed, which prompts the parents to at least consider a diagnosis. Can have downsides. More, for example, here https://kentakaimentalhealth.com pros and cons of diagnosing mental illness. but no matter someone's age, they can still have benefits. When you are neurodivergent, you process the stimuli in the world differently from others. Understanding exactly what you have going on is extremely important for building healthy coping mechanisms. It releases budget from health insurers to get if needed therapy, treatment, or other mitigating opportunities. I stopped thinking that my bad life outcomes were caused by others. I realized that shit happens and that certain things would never come easy because of it. It also made me appreciate my successes instead of taking them for granted. Knowing what I know now, I can't believe how far I've come. And I am grateful because statistically it could have been worse. Much worse. Certainty that comes from a trained professional agreeing that this is your condition often means you can stop using the tools you have incorrectly. It's like if you have a 300-tooth hacksaw blade you've been using on wet lumber your whole life. Of course it's dull and you're worn out. The analogy breaks down when you ascribe purpose to people where none exists. We're all outputs of an emergent evolutionary process. But you might be better at cutting metal. 28 here, diagnosed last year as autistic. I didn't know how much it changed, and I certainly would never have anticipated the massive changes it made. I became aware of names for things I didn't know had names and solutions, felt less alone, accepted myself more confidence, realized being autistic was actually the reason for physical issues I had that I then cured, learned to unmask, which I'm writing a book about. You absolutely do not have to mask, and shouldn't. I am now happily stimming in public, not ashamed of any aids I have to use like ear defenders. I'm not pretending to be someone else, I'm just me, and if people don't like it, that's their problem. I am proudly autistic. So you can understand why you're different. So you don't have to listen to neurotypical accuse you of being lazy. So that if you don't want to take medications, you can take your diagnosis and use it to find non-medicinal lifestyle changes or techniques that can help. I thought if I got an ADHD diagnosis that maybe I could get medication to help me function more in daily life. Now I'm suspecting I don't have that at all, but some combination of CPTSD and high-functioning autism. And it looks like for me, you're right, a diagnosis wouldn't do a whole lot. I do think the self-diagnosis thing is helpful for me with autism, at least, in that I can finally understand my struggles with socializing more fully and maybe stop hating myself so much. Yes, it was worth it, if only to help silence the endless tapes I play about my worth and ability and intelligence. There are now moments when I realize that I am not lazy. I have developed coping strategies over the years that have worked more or less. But now with this diagnosis I can refine them or discard them for better ones.